I don't,
Yeah, and so I drink water all day.
Yeah.
And
It's Ashley. Ashley go through like, half a gallon a day or whatever. And she gets mad at me. And I try every time I go like, oh, I'm going to do it. And then I don't get thirsty.
How often would you say you do an IV? That's not a regular thing. That's just when you're not feeling well.
Yeah, I only do it when I'm not feeling well. So post cold, busy season. I mean, the cold plunge has saved a lot. Not of money, but it's I just
Are you back on it?
I did. I've already done it 3 days back to back.
40 what degrees you said?
I do it at 48 degrees, between 47 and 48.
Did you see that clip when Joe Rogan and Huberman?
It's just me. That's me this morning because I do a check-in with one of my group texts on working out. So
why you look so tight, dog? Why you don't look relaxed, bro? Chill.
Well, it's cold, bro. What are you talking about? It's my first time getting in it. Yeah.
Oh, it's your first time since you've got it?
No, not since I got it. I mean, just like for the day. It's my friend,
yeah.
At first time I get in there and then I relax.
No, for sure.
But I'm just, bro, I'm wide. So I always look tense when I'm working out.
It hurts, bro.
And then,
my arms hurt, my hands hurt, my feet and my arms hurt the most when I go in.
And then I was working out yesterday and then Ashley sends me this and she's like, is there a prisoner in our backyard working out right now? I can only show Will that. I'm not trying to pull a Stephen Furtick and show my body. I'm not trying to show the camera.
It literally looks like you're in prison on the yard right now doing some weights.
Ashley was like, it looks like, she's like, it looks like
a California prison for sure,
you're definitely it's
on the yard.
It's a nice sunny day, baby. And then I send it to my
workout group chat?
My workout group, and then my brother Nathan, he's like, bro, what are you in a prison yard? I'm like, dog, I'm like, why you guys all say that's like kind of racist to say that I look like a prisoner with my shirt off, just because all the tattoos, man. So it's not allowed.
You're dialing back in the exercise routine.
Well, I'm trying, man. So this is the first week in, bro,
a few months.
No, maybe a year since I've had 3 mornings back to back open. I can't tell you the last time. I can't tell you the last time I even had 2 consecutive days of morning free. And so this week...
Because you usually have a meeting first thing in the morning.
Boom, 10 a.m. or whatever, or 9 sometimes, or I got to be on the, we're in California, so meetings can be anywhere, right? So it's like, I got to get on the road. I got to be...
Yeah.
I got to be at our Pomona campus, which is 45 minutes away with traffic, so it's like, if the meeting's at 9 or 10, I gotta be out the door by 7:45 or whatever. So, but this week I purposely made mornings pretty open because Matthias did a camp, like a coding camp. So my mornings were open to take him, and so I've been taking him, and then I come home, and then I work out, the past 2 days my first meetings have started at like 10:30. So I've had that whole, which was nice because I'm like, see what happens if I can just have like an open morning. I can actually get a rhythm. I'm 3 days back to back working out, 40 minutes on the treadmill.
40 minutes on the treadmill?
Yeah. Just like
and you weight lift?
Yeah, and then I'll do like either the tonal or HIIT training. So Monday I did the tonal. Yesterday I did a kettlebell circuit. Today I did pretty much all cardio, which was treadmill and then my sled. I have that. I have like a weighted.
And then you plunge before or after?
I like it after. I know it's best before, but
I do it before
now. But I know before is the healthiest, but I'm hot, I'm sweaty.
For sure.
I bought like a little outdoor shower thing, so I just rinse off. And my body is hot, so I just get in that thing, and 3 minutes in, 48 degrees.
I started plunges after working out because it feels great.
Yeah,
it's hard, but it feels great. But I started maybe 2 months ago doing it like first thing I wake up.
Yeah,
that thing.
And that I get. We still are trying to, like I told you last time, so it's planned at the end of this month to get the power ran because they got to run copper and do all this stuff. And it's like the sauna has to be powered like a Tesla. So it takes a lot of amp and voltage. So, and it's expensive. So it's just finding the right time to do it. So into this month, it's going to happen. So perfectly for me, if that happens, even if I don't work out, I'm going to turn it on because I think it's controlled by Wi-Fi. I'm going to turn it on, heat it up, go in the sauna for 15, 20 minutes, go in the cold plunge 3 minutes, and start my day like that. But right now, if the morning's cold and then I'm like, for me, I'm the type of guy that's like, my body's got to be heated up. So I want to go in a sauna or I want to work out so that I want to go in the cold plunge.
Yeah, you need to do something to make it easier, for sure.
Yeah.
On Mondays,
just going from a cold morning
it's hard,
or
bro.
a cold house straight.
It's hard. It's like, it's really hard. So like every morning, doesn't matter how, I've been doing it, almost every day for 4 months now?
Yeah.
I go like this. I do that for like a minute. I go like, oh, and I just go on.
Yeah.
And then on Mondays now, I started doing, I don't have a sauna.
Yeah.
But I'll do 20 minutes hot tub at like 105, 108, like really hot.
Yeah.
And I plunge for about 2-3 minutes, and I'll do that 3 rounds. Oh. So I'm in the hot tub almost like a full hour.
Yeah.
And that, I just feel like,
good.
bro, I feel my body healing. Because I did that at a spa we were just with Larry. So Larry, we were at a spa and they had the contrast. There's a steam room.
Yeah.
And while I was doing it, I just felt my body was being healed. And So yesterday or Monday, today's Wednesday? Yeah, Monday.
Yeah.
20 minutes, 3 minutes, 20 minutes, 3 minutes, 20 minutes, 3 minutes.
Oh, good.
I've been doing it twice a week, Monday and Friday.
Yeah.
It's been a game changer.
I don't know. Have you ever seen our bathroom before? Have I ever showed it to you?
You're which,
in my house, my bathroom?
I've been to your bathroom, yeah.
The remodeled one that looks like
I haven't been there for probably almost a year. I think
it was the nice one. It looked like a resort. Like it was.
I mean, everything's relative. Everything looks like a resort to me at your house compared to
Not at all. Not at all. I got a 40-year-old home.
It didn't look. No, it looked regular. It was like a year.
Really?
I was there for my birthday last year when we hung out.
But not my bedroom. My bedroom house. That's what I'm talking about.
I'm talking about the one in your living room.
Oh, yeah, that's normal. Yeah. That's a normal bathroom. So what I was gonna say was, so my shower is like a steam room shower. Like the glass is covered, it goes all the way up. It's only like 6 inches of opening.
Up if you,
and then I have a really large bathtub that like fits me in it. But what I was gonna get to was we were able to build it that way because during COVID. My master bathroom toilet flooded and flooded into our garage, bathroom. So the whole thing had to be stripped. But because it went through COVID, like we could not get a response from the insurance agency because they were dealing with so much stuff. So it took 1.5 years without no master bathroom. We were all sharing one small bathroom because our bathroom downstairs didn't work too, or upstairs. It flooded the other one too. So we had to go downstairs every time. So finally, one contractor we had this like crazy number, and the insurance agency approved it after 1.5 years because just no momentum. And I was like, hey, I'm going to get lawyers involved or whatever. And so we like basically did a dream bathroom. And so our bathroom is like, it's fun. So it's like I got a big bathtub. I got like this. I'm trying to give you an idea of it, but I'll show you after the podcast. It's not, but it's fun. It's like that's what it is. So that's my spot where like when I go Epsom salt and I like long work week, it's like we go in there and that's just one side of it. But I designed the bathroom, so that's like my little oasis until we did the little cold plunge thing. But I'm just trying to learn from you. I want to live long, bro. Mental health. I just want my mental health to last, bro.
Did you ever do the breathing stuff?
The Wim Hof stuff? No, I've never gone into Wim Hof breath work. I believe it.
I don't think you. I
believe it works.
I don't see you doing it just because it's like it's kind of it's for sure embarrassing, and it's annoying. Yeah. And it takes a long time.
Yeah,
it takes like 10 to 15 minutes.
No,
I don't think with your personality type, because even with I do it 3 to 4 times a week, and it's hard to do it, even though I like really love it.
Yeah. I wonder in theory, I wouldn't do it, but I wonder in theory if it would help with my ADHD. I'm sure it would. I'm sure it would regulate the dopamine and serotonin that your body requires. Maybe not.
So what I do is first thing I wake up, I have the IU light, the sunlight 10,000 IU. I bought one of those.
Yeah, super Asian.
Yes. And then I do that for about 15 minutes. And then right after that, I jump into the plunge.
Yeah. It's a good routine.
Yeah, I do it every day.
It's a good routine.
I'm
people think you're young, but they don't know that you're 65. That's what's crazy. You appear young.
You saw the picture, but I'm getting like super shape.
Yeah.
I'm like,
you
it's
sent
impressive.
me a shirtless selfie. which I don't know if I should share that publicly.
If anyone just saw our screenshots in our text thread, like Patria, Beloved, and Beyond the Letter will be over within 30 minutes. Our text thread is out of control.
Just Will taking pictures of his shirt off and sending it to his guy, to us.
We'll end God Morning LLC.
Jeff Osborne.
Jeff's will be over. Huntington Sammy will be over.
For sure. It would happen. But that's how you know we're brothers, because you got to have thick skin to be in that group chat. You got to have thick skin. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Beyond the Letter. Adam and Will in the house. Hey, I apologize. It's hot in here. Our condenser. Not in here.
In the outside, I'm saying. So it's hot in here because it's 98 in California.
Well, and we've been having some like condenser issues with this AC system.
Alex said it was fine. He didn't hear it. Alex.
Oh, really? Oh, so maybe kick it on. So then we'll see what happens. Basically, when there's humidity in the air, the condenser like expels the water out of the thing, so then it makes this weird sound. So we've been turning it off before we shoot, but it's disconnected, so that's probably why it's... Anyway, we'll try to get a little cooler in here because we turned it off for filming earlier beyond I do. But welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We got Will in the house.
Yep.
I thought, for today's episode, I know you've probably been wanting to do it, and you've been respecting me to talk about the conversation, but if you want to talk about immigration, we can talk about that.
You want to talk about it?
I'm comfortable. Let me give context on why, when in society, in general, Beyond the Letter represents a ministry, but in general, the reason why it's politics or cultural issues, I don't like to do an episode right away. Some people will do it, political figures, other podcasts, because they're trying to capitalize on viewership.
Sure. That's a part of their
that's their ethos. So like something happens, they're like, we got to talk about it because we're going to get viewers and blah, blah, blah. To me, I take the opposite approach. It's hard when something drops for people to be rational. Everyone is feeling different things. And so the moment you start talking about stuff, it's like everybody's, the wound is open. And so everyone's taking everything personal. They're looking at every word. Everything that you say, they're parsing it apart with a fine-tooth comb. Everybody's looking to be offended, Like I one time, maybe like 6 or 9 months ago, had someone send me a long DM and said, I love you. I love this church. I've listened to your podcast. I go to your church, blah, 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 blah. And then I was bored the other night, and I went through the people that you follow, and I found that you follow a conservative political talk analysis.
For sure.
And I'm going to leave the church. And I was like, man, I follow liberal.
For sure.
Like scroll through, and you will find liberal political analysis. And it's my Instagram. I can follow whoever I want as long as I'm preaching on Sundays the Word of God and not using that to push an agenda. So I lovingly kind of rebuked her, and she actually received it. She's like, you know what, you're right.
You
I'm
responded.
sorry. I did. Yeah. I said I'm sorry, but I did. I lovingly said it's my business. It's I follow liberal and conservative.
For sure.
I have values and opinions, but don't judge it based off who I follow, because just because I follow them for information doesn't mean I co-sign on all of their politics or all of their beliefs. I have so if you want to ask me my independent beliefs, I'm happy to answer, but that also shouldn't be tied to your church attendance at the same time. For sure. And she was like, yeah, I forget kind of what she said, but she kind of said like, no, I understand. I'm sorry. It's really emotional times right now.
For sure.
So it was like, for me, it's like, that's the model. We take it for the podcast too.
No, me too. Even when I'm preaching, I don't necessarily do a series on social issues. I'll rather lean in on social issues when I'm going through a book in the Bible, because if you just only focus on something that's like a landmine, people don't hear what you're saying, they hear what they want, right? And then people don't see things as they are, they see things as they are, right? And so in the same way, I typically don't lean into social or political issues like live, because people are way too emotionally charged. I try to shepherd my community all throughout the year with all these type of issues, right? But immigration, I might get a little emotional on this one because it's so personal for me. I literally I was texting someone this morning because I got a phone call from the ICE center twice, but I didn't know it was my boy, you know? And so it's, this was the first time, bro, like I was almost losing my like almost lost. I almost lost my cool a few times.
Yeah.
Because this hits so personal, which is usually not my temperament, because I'm able to like shepherd and disconnect. But
well, fill people in on why this is. So here, let me add, like, fill in some gaps real quick. Is because maybe the show, because we're probably over a month out since kind of the ICE raids, immigration issues, stuff that happened in LA, but then has transpired, all across America with these No Kings protests and other things like that. And just because we haven't done an episode about it doesn't mean internally that we as a community, even brothers, friends, pastors, are not on the move. And later on, I'll share of how I've responded to people's DMs and also approached it with my congregation, because one of the things we try at Patria, we try to do, which is a little different, is the sense that our church is truly like a bag of Skittles. And so the moment we speak on something, if it's not implicitly in the Bible, we isolate a group. And so, but that's why this podcast serves as a way to flesh out concepts and ideas as believers, right? That aren't what you and I are talking about. I wouldn't say like some stuff we could debate in the Bible, but other stuff would just be like, hey, this is what I'm personally experiencing. This is why it's personal to me. Yeah. It's personal to me as a friend, a brother, a Christian. And I'm not, I told my congregation when I approached it this past weekend was,
you addressed it.
I did.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
On stage, you leaned in for a moment. Yeah.
I talked about Israel and Iran. I talked about the No Kings protests, talked about ICE raids, immigration. Not talked about it. Literally what I just said is, hey, I know
what's going on,
that these things are going on. And then I read Matthew 24 and I shared, here's the responsibility I have. I said, because my church is truly diverse. I have every ethnicity in this church. If you pulled out a bag of Skittles and I said, can you tell me what color's the main in this? You wouldn't know. Same thing with my church. When I look out at you, I could not tell you. And I go, so with that diversity means that everybody here has different convictions, politics. There are values we have about the Bible, and there are other values that the Bible is not black and white about. Sure. And I said, I want all of you to be involved in your nation. I want all of you to be politically involved, but Patria, we take a stand that we will never push the pulpit for a political agenda. And I said, there are churches and pastors who believe that they're symbiotic. We are not one of those churches. Same here. And so I just said that. And so then I read Matthew 24. Jesus talked about there'd be rumors of wars and, everything Jesus talked about the end times. But Jesus says, what will happen is the believer's love will grow cold. So I just said, church, all I'm asking you is for your love not to grow cold. Do not let all of this allow whenever you go on Facebook and you comment, whenever you talk to a family member, whatever that you disagree with or whatever, these are real people on the other end of what your statements. For sure. Please live out your convictions. I said, I want a church that is convicted with politics and votes. And I said, but I'm basically nuancing, but I don't need to know it. For sure. I don't need to know your politics. You don't need to know mine. We need to know the Word of God. And there are times, sometimes it blends, but a lot of times it doesn't. So I said, what I said was, your convictions is your politics, but your duty is to love. That's Jesus's duty for you. So do them both. That's basically what I said. Do them both. And let's pray. And it seemed, there's people who prefer, they want me to, they want me to go up and, both sides want me to go up and do blah, 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 blah.
Our boy
right?
Julian's been getting lit up too. You see his stuff?
But he's in LA. He's a stone, and he's in downtown. He's in Koreatown.
Me and Julian
he's a stone's throw away from everything going on.
Everything else. He's literally outside his doors where the protests are happening.
Right.
And so
well, so fill in real quick some people though, like context of why this moment is personal for you.
Well, a couple things is the ICE raids hit LA and California the hardest, right? Yeah. And our state is where you're going to have the most undocumented people and the most immigrants are. I don't know the data. I'm assuming California probably has the largest number of immigrants and undocumented people. That's an assumption. Don't know if it's true. That's why I probably imagine Trump sent the raids here first in the other major cities. That's one thing. So the reason why it's let's get to personal later. The reason why it's relevant is because it showed up in front of our front door.
For sure.
Right? And so when something shows up in front of my front door, I'm not going to ignore it. I'm going to lean in. But it became personal because...
And that's on a shepherd's
100%.
side, right? You're like, you know, it's like, and for us, like, we're getting calls and emails just like you in different regards of like, hey, my uncle just got taken. My own family member and in-law, actually, the ICE raids actually started like 90 days ago, maybe 4 or 5 months ago. And so I've had family members who got picked up and in detainment and immigration and stuff like that. And so if you're in California, especially if you're a minority, it's hitting someone you know.
For sure.
Yeah, and affecting someone you know. Yeah. So it's at home, you know, it's in your corner.
And Latinos and Asians are the ones obviously who are we're the immigrants of the undocumented and the immigrants of this country. So it became personal to me because, one, I lead a church full of immigrants, right? We're mostly Asian American and a lot of Latino families as well. And so we have a lot of Asian Americans who are undocumented, as well as Latinos. A lot of my Latino people in our church didn't know that this is also a part of the Asian struggle. And I didn't know this until I became a youth pastor. When I used to do mission trips, I'd be trying to mobilize all these kids. Hey, let's go overseas to do some mission works, and the same 10 of them just stays real quiet.
Yeah.
And I found out later, they're like, hey, people, I'm undocumented. And I was like, oh, snap, I didn't even.
Yeah, you didn't.
It wasn't even on my radar. And so their lived experience is just different in that regards. I mean, it became more personal to me because there's a particular individual that I'm really close with. I did their wedding, and he's been following everything by the books. He spent time in jail. His story is pretty out there, but he was checking in every few months as he's supposed to. And then his last check-in, which was a couple months ago, they threw him up against the wall, put handcuffs on him, and they threw an ankle monitor on him. And he was like, what's going on? I've never missed a check-in. I know I committed a crime when I was a youth. I did my time, but what's going on? And then they were trying to deport him on the spot.
Yeah.
But he knew some of his rights, protected at least a couple months ago. And then, so they let him go. They did some research. All right, you're free to go. And so he knew his time was coming, right? He knew that so he agreed with the ICE agents or what, I don't know all the proper language, but they had a mutual agreement on paper, verbally and on paper, that he was self-deport. And so my boy, on Wednesday of last week, ICE shows up at his hair salon, which makes me go there. And he was arguing with them over the phone because they're saying step outside. He's like, I'm not stepping outside because I'm self-deporting on Friday. I bought my plane ticket. Y'all know I got my plane ticket. And y'all said we've agreed that I was self-deport. And I've never missed my check-ins. They're like, yeah, we know, but just step outside. But we know what's happening right now, where because the executive order is just on site, right? Like arrest, detain, and deport on site. And he was like, I just have 2 days left with my family and my wife and my pregnant wife.
Yeah. So he's Korean.
He's Korean.
And his wife is Hispanic.
She's Mexican.
Right? And is she Mexican American?
She's a U.S. citizen. Yeah,
okay.
yeah. She was born in the U.S. And so, but because of his record, right? He was pardoned from his sentence, but his record, he can't get citizenship through his wife unless he gets another pardon from Governor Newsom. So multi-layer stuff here, right? All that to be said, Wednesday I spend the whole day with him. You know, I'm helping his mom. His mom, you know, she's an immigrant. She's a U.S. citizen. Because he came here legally. He was on his pathway to citizenship, but he ended up getting locked up. So because of that, his family became
as a juvenile, right?
He as a juvenile when he was in high school. And so all that to be said, I'm there with him all day. I'm talking to his mom. You know, she's a widow because his dad passed while he was doing time. So we're just preparing for him. I got him some housing in Korea, hit up some homies who have, you know, resources. So, hey, when you land there, my homie will get you guys free housing for an indefinite amount of time until you get your feet settled. So we're good. ICE is outside, but we're just inside.
Yeah.
And then finally, after they talk, about an hour later, ICE kind of like leaves. And so his next day was his appointment to check in to self-deport. And the ICE agents were supposed to meet him at the airport to help him.
To take off the ankle monitor, and let him get off.
Yeah. And then he go to Korea. He gets pulled over he gets pulled over. There's a video that's going pretty viral. And it's really emotional because his mom is
Yeah.
like wailing, his wife is crying, and he's looking at the officers like, I've done everything by the books. Why are you guys doing this? I'm on my way to the office to check in, and I'm self-deporting. Here's my plane ticket. I paid for this, over $1,000. They don't care. So since Thursday, he's just been locked up. And so he was here in Santa Ana, and now he's in El Paso, and we don't know how long he's going to be locked up for. And so to me, that's insane. That's literally insane, right?
Yeah.
I'm not talking about a border security. That's a whole different conversation. I'm talking about people who are here, undocumented. It was illegal, especially in his case. He was doing everything by the books. And the thing about my brother is he always says, I committed a crime when I was a youth. I got to do the time, and I'm always going to submit to the law. So even when I showed up at the hair salon, I was like, hey, I could rally a couple hundred people right now with my one post, and we'll get your back. He was like, no, Pastor. People were like, I'm guilty. I just want it to be due process. I'm leaving Friday. That's the only reason why I'm not stepping out. I don't want to cause no problems. I don't want to cause no drama. So, I mean, I've been talking to his wife every day.
Now, for perspective, he's been in America since he was two.
Since he was 2.
And he's late 30s now?
Yeah, I think it's 1 or 2. Yeah, I think he might be your age or 1 year younger even.
Okay.
I think he's like 33, 34.
Okay.
So I've been talking to immigration lawyers, right? Because I'm talking to everybody trying to help this family. And even immigration lawyers were telling me this is unprecedented because they're not operating off of state laws.
Yeah.
They're operating off of federal laws. And so they're taking like their clients to court for like an immigration court process, and they get stopped at the courthouse. And ICE takes them.
Yeah, there's a lot of videos
And they're
of
like,
that. Yeah.
these immigration lawyers are like, what?
They've never seen that before.
What are you guys doing? Like, we're going through the process for their legal like progression towards citizenship. Grab, gone. And then they don't even get deported.
Yeah.
They're detained.
Now, from what I'm aware of, not that I'm giving it credence, but majority of these individuals, because they're undocumented, they're documented in the court system because majority have committed some type of crime in their lifetime. Is that
majority
correct?
of what?
The individuals who are being detained.
No.
No.
So this is where the conservative narrative is we're only arresting criminals.
Yeah.
If you look at Trump's executive order, is any undocumented person on site.
Okay.
Yeah. So they're literally that's why you see Home Depot raids. That's why you're seeing Walmart. That's why now they are targeting some areas where there is proof of past crime.
Yeah.
But they're just getting anybody right now.
Yeah, because any person I've heard that's been getting detained, they have at some point been picked up for a crime. Now, it could have been 20 years prior, 30, but them being undocumented, they're on the books as being undocumented because judicially they're aware that this undocumented person exists because they have been DUI'd, pulled, served time, whatever, but let them, because if you're California or whatever, that's looser immigration laws, so you can do time and they're not going to deport you. They're just going to let you go back or whatever. So they have you on the books. So they're, that's my understanding of.
And my thing is like, I always say when it comes to politics, the reason why I personally don't like to get into politics is because I like to say the Bible is clear on principles, but the Bible is not clear on the application of the principles at all times, right?
Yeah.
And the politics is the how. Right.
Yeah.
If the Bible are the principles, politics are how to apply that. So I said stuff like this, right? Like when it comes to the Bible says care for the poor, conservatives want to care for the poor through philanthropy and through nonprofits and through their own donations, while progressives want to care for the poor through welfare and taxing and government entities, right? So, and you could be a believer on both sides. You could debate economy, economics, you could debate what's more effective, but I could see both believers on the same side. Now, when it comes to immigration, conservatives would say, yeah, we believe America's a land of immigrants, but you want to go through the legal pathway, right? Progressives will go more towards like, yeah, we want to care for the foreigners and the immigrants, but we want to give more pathways to citizenship. So you can be a believer on both sides. That's not the argument here. I think for me, at this current moment, dude, this is the first time in my life I looked at my wife this week because I've been like a part-time lawyer, dude. I looked at my wife and I was like, wow, I would have loved to have been a freaking lawyer.
Yeah.
Like serving the marginalized, disadvantaged, throwing out communities because this is insane how they're being treated. Because you don't have money, you don't have resources, you don't have access. If you don't have access, how are you going to have legal counsel? And then more money you have, the better legal counsel you have. So like there's policies, that's the law, and then there's lawyers who are able to work the system when poor and marginalized communities are disadvantaged because they don't have the same access as wealthy people, right? So a few things I like to say biblically is Deuteronomy 8, or even throughout the book of Proverbs, God identifies with the poor, the widows, the orphans, and the foreigners. He identifies, he says, I am the God of the widows, orphans, and foreigners. And he says, I take up their cause, right? And what's unique about that, in the ancient world, all the gods took up the cause of generals and kings. Only the God of Yahweh took up the cause of widows, orphans, and foreigners. But if you look at it biblically, it's economical. Because kings and generals, they don't need someone to take up their cause because they have the resources and the military power to advance their own agendas. Widows and orphans and foreigners is economical because if you're a widow at that first century or ancient world agrarian societies, without a husband, you can't make money. So a widow had no money. Orphan has no father, no money. And foreigners, they were just completely oppressed, right? And because even
they're fleeing something most of the time.
And even if you look at history, dominant cultures tend to oppress minority cultures, right? Egypt to Israel, right? Rome to all the people they've colonized, right? So God is bent towards the marginalized because they can't fend for themselves. So that's a biblical principle, right? To be and even Jesus says in Matthew 25, whatever you've done to the least of these, you've done unto me. And he says, prisoners, like the naked, who are homeless people, the hungry and thirsty. And then he uses the word xenos, which is foreigners or immigrants or people like sojourners to the land, because even Jesus himself knows they are the most marginalized, disadvantaged communities, and his heart is extended towards those communities. I think both sides believe that. I think where I was getting, and I went into the comments with some, I don't know if you saw, I was talking to some.
No, I didn't. No.
I jumped into Josh Howerton's post. I jumped in because he had a whole post on obey the law, they should be punished for their crimes. And I went in, I was like, hey bro, this was hard for me to read. And here's what other perspective that I think you may be missing.
And do you know Josh?
Yeah, we've DM'd. He's invited me to sub. We're not friends.
Right.
There's a mutual respect.
I'm thinking someone I know has a connection with him, or was supposed to meet up with him, or was it
you?
Yeah.
He's doing some stuff in this August in SoCal.
That's right. Okay.
And it's not like I told him, hey, I'm not coming as a critic.
I'm just saying it's important to know that you're talking about you push back on someone you know.
For sure.
This is not a stranger. You're not on Dr. Phil's Instagram or whatever, which is fine if you did. But it's like you actually pushed against a very national Christian pastor, but and so who Josh is really well respected in the church community. But it's the fact that you were like, hey, I'm a Christian too. You're an educated Christian. He's an educated Christian. You're an educated pastor. He's an educated pastor. And you thought, I'm going to push back on this publicly because this post is publicly. Yes. What you could do. It's not my style.
It's not my style either. That's the thing. That's how I know it's personal. Which is why I'm also saying that
you're self-aware.
I'm self-aware, and I want people to know. The only time you're not biased,
because I'll do it in person. I will.
Yeah, for sure.
I'll do it in person.
Yeah, you're just more wise than I am.
No. I'm not afraid of conflict. It's just to me, like, I want to read that body language. I want to see. I'm not going to let you go to Google or Chat GPT to get your response. We need a hash right now. That's why if people disagree, I go. Let's do a Zoom. We're not going to do anything over the phone.
And for me too, is the only reason why I posted on his. It was such a strong post.
Yeah.
And he has such a big following.
Yeah.
That I just felt like, and I even wrote in the post, hey, I'm not coming to you as a critic. I'm responding on your post as a fellow pastor just to give you a different angle, right? And so my thing is like, it's just human dignity.
Yeah. Did he respond?
He didn't respond to me directly, but he did like a report, like 5 stories after.
Okay.
And he like, in the story, he quoted what I said.
Oh, okay.
Some people are saying, and it was literally what I said.
Okay.
So I think he's responding to that. And, there's no harsh feelings, It's just like, hey, bro, like, what you're saying is just very conservative, Right. There were other things I wanted to say, but I didn't because it's personal. And there's other few friends who DM me, right? And I had to say, hey, bro, I love you.
And not saying your overall beliefs aren't conservative in certain forms. It's just you're saying
many conservative.
You're saying in that
viewpoints.
moment that hey, I think there's a unconscious unawareness or bias that I want to push back on.
Yes, I felt like it was one-sided. It's so clear.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's. I think people. Dude, I could talk about this for hours. And now let's remove Josh. I think just conservatives in general, they do well because things are so clear, right? It's judicial, it's policy, it's the law of the letter, right?
The point of conservatism is black and white.
Yeah, that's exactly
that's
right.
essentially what it is. It's things are black and white.
Yes.
The word liberal or liberalism is loose.
Exactly.
It's this idea of it's much more liberal than that. It's much more open-ended than that. And that can be positive, that could be negative, right? The reason why we have parks is because of Democrats.
Yes.
Democrats pass law for parks.
Yeah.
And conservatives, a Republican never second guesses taking their kid to a city slide, but they don't. What they don't always recognize is Democrats. As someone could correct me if I'm wrong. From what I'm aware of, they've kind of established national parks to what it is today and city parks to what it is today because that's a social welfare
I can see
program.
That. I don't know if that's true, but I can see that.
At least that's what I've been aware of. But again, you and I, we're pastors. We're not political commentators.
Yeah,
I'm not a poli-sci major.
For sure.
It's not,
But we're pastors, we do have like biblical convictions and we have to think through the nuance of how this is applied in unique context. So for me, when it comes to immigration, and dude, it's not like I know let's be honest, I don't know what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. I just know what I know, and there's many things, it's like above my pay grade. I just know what I just quoted in scripture. I understand that God's heart is bent towards the marginalized. I see that all throughout scripture. I see that in the Gospels, especially with Jesus. But then I think when it comes to what's happening in our country right now with these ICE
and you're
rates,
not, when you say marginalized, you're not saying that American people aren't marginalized, that like documented people, there aren't documented.
Yeah, I'm saying anyone.
Exactly.
Yeah, anyone, right?
I'm just clear. I know where people's mind goes. And they're he's saying undocumented people are the only marginalized people in society. It's like, no, you have low income families, you have white communities, black communities, Hispanic communities. Sure. There's marginalized everywhere. There's white communities with fentanyl crises. There's Hispanic communities with, poverty and all that. And they would be documented. God cares about all of those because people. Many of them are orphaned and widowed. But
what I do see in the Old Testament and in Christ, that I forget which theologian coined it. He called it like the quadruplet preferential favor. There was like a theological phrase: the widow, the orphan, the foreigner. They're used together in these phrases. And in context, they were the people who had the least amount of resources and access to capital. And God has a special care for them. So even when you read Proverbs, I think it's Proverbs 18, it says, whoever lends to the poor, lends to the Lord and God. So there is something there with the heart of God that is bent towards those who don't have access, right? And that could be manifested and applied in different ways. So all that to be said, I'm more along the lines of, given our unique cultural moment of undocumented families, there should be a higher emphasis on pathways to citizenship, as well as protection over mixed status families, than just law by the letter, just start grabbing people and snatching them and throwing them out. That's just my personal convictions from scripture. But the scripture doesn't literally say that, right? The Bible doesn't say this is what you do. It gives you principles, and believers, and especially when it comes to politicians and lawmakers, they have to debate how that's applied. Because how far do you, I know people are like, well, deport everyone that came here illegally. I'm like, well, then everyone should leave this land. Period. Except indigenous Native Americans. Like, how far do you want to apply this principle? Is nuance for you because it doesn't affect you, but if you're going to follow the same principle of, hey, anyone that's here that's undocumented, they should be deported. I'm like, well, this whole country was stolen by people who came here and colonized. So does that make sense? So it's like, it's so like judicial in one sense and blind in another sense. And there's nuance where I feel like that's where I'm at, where I'm like, look, border security is a different conversation, but even there, treat people with humanity. One of the things that Josh wrote in his post was like, he uses illustration where he was like, if someone tries to break into your house and you leave them out, that's not unloving. No. You leave them out because you're loving the people inside. And I pushed back on his post. I was like, well, if they were cold and hungry and thirsty and homeless and they needed help, I think we could love both at the same time. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? But there's nuance, right? How far do you take this? So that's my point is just like, my heart is more towards like, that's why, but let's be honest, this is where politics gets crazy. Obama deported more people than any president ever. Yeah. People don't talk about that, right? Yeah. But he did create pathways to citizenship, like DACA, DREAM Act. Yeah, Dreamers. For kids who were here since this is all they know. Yeah. They've been here since they were like 1 or 2 years. They didn't even know. Most of the people that I've pastored who are undocumented, they didn't even know they were undocumented until they were like junior high in high school. Yeah. Right? So that you're going to deport kids who've been here since they're 1 or 2 to a country that they don't speak the language of any family. So that's where the nuance comes in. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And that's where I'm like, hey, we should fight towards pathways of citizenship. And beyond that, what they're doing to my boy, that's just pure injustice.
Yeah. And that's more personal for you.
Yeah, but it's also injustice.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's I think because, you know, I lean towards, you know, like strong border security and all that kind of stuff like that. But I think what I struggle with, just an argument, because I'm the, you know, I have a debate background in apologetics, so everything to me is, let's talk about the moment and your stories and your illustrations of how you're conceptualizing the argument. Like, it better make sense, you know, or else it's a straw man argument or whatever else. And, you know, to me, I think a lot of the concerns or people's arguments on both sides, it doesn't have a natural practice of like, what are we doing right now? You know, to your point, you say, oh, let's, you know, we have a right to get everyone out. And it's like, okay, well, let's really think about the implication, because you have conviction, which I talked about, and it's the way I rationalize it to people one-on-one, or even I did this weekend in my church. You have conviction, you have duty. Duty, there's like, a police officer can have a conviction, which is, it's going above the law. It's going above duty to a certain degree, right? Like an officer may say, I have a conviction not to eat donuts because I don't want to be that cop. Well, that's a conviction. Cop can't go to another cop and be like, you're a bad cop if you eat donuts, because that feeds into our, you know, our thing, right? That's a conviction. But then you have duty, which is what their vow takes to serve and protect. Sure. Where you see someone, you know, you see a law being broken, you know, you have a duty to enforce it.
I understand that.
As believers, like, we have convictions, and those convictions at times deviate. You may have a conviction where your wife doesn't believe in epidural for giving birth. And another Christian woman can have a conviction where she doesn't have a problem with it. Now, believe it or not, as a pastor, I get brought those people's convictions all the time. Sure. My dad has a conviction that Christians shouldn't eat candy and chips. But he also doesn't go on the platform and say, you're not a Christian if you do eat candies and chips. He just thinks, though, that if you do that, you are adding to killing your body, right? That's a conviction of his. I may have a conviction that is anti-aspirin or anything, and there are Christian denominations who don't believe that you can take aspirin or whatever. I disagree with that, but again, that's their conviction. They're taking what they think is a biblical principle, right? Don't let anything unfilthy, unclean into your body, blah, 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 blah. You know, they take the Greek word pharmacia, you know, in Revelation as anything pharmaceutical. And so that is their application. Though I disagree, I say, okay, that is your conviction for your, then there is duty. And so I think if more Christians, liberal, conservative, would be aware that there is a difference between your convictions and there is a difference between your duty.
For sure.
Understand your duty and understand what's a conviction. Because what's happening is Christians against Christians are looking at each other's convictions and going, well, you're not a real Christian.
Yeah.
Or you're not loving. You're not this. Or then duty. And I'm not saying you're saying anything wrong.
Sure.
I'm like, you're in line with everything.
Yeah.
But I'm like
You're
talking to
the average,
the average
listener.
person that's
For
listening,
sure.
that's going, hey, what you got to be able to do, like me, as you talk, I can be aware of what you're saying is as your conviction and then what you're calling us to be as dutiful Christians,
For sure.
right? The duty of a believer is what Jesus called us to do, which is to love.
Yeah.
You know, what is the greatest commandment? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Well, people want to get involved and be like, well, who's neighbor? Well, Jesus meant anyone. Your neighbor is anyone that's neighbor to you, you know, anyone that's near you. Like it's not, that statement is not built up by lines drawn on a map. Jesus loved your neighbor as yourself, right? And so we have a Christian calling and duty, and then there's the government political thing, which is what I've tried to share with individuals on one-to-one is like, live out your convictions through your politics. Like do your voting that does that. But then as a Christian, so me as a pastor can be obscenely conservative, obscenely for open borders, obscenely for, having undocumented people leave the country while also
caring for people who are
undocumented in your
sure.
country, because that is what's in front of you.
For sure.
And so you can have a conviction while also having, like you said, your duty. Was the person breaking in because, it's not right, but were they hungry? Were they because God's duty for me is higher than the political landscape that you just mentioned. I get the political rationale of the natural world, but if a homeless person is coming up to my house and I don't perceive a threat, I'm not going to shoot him. I'm going to ask him what he needs. I'm going to ask, now if he's a threat and he got a knife and okay, I'm going to defend my family. But that's why examples don't always work, because it's like, well, let's talk about this homeless guy, or let's talk about this person that broke into the house. What is it that they're going through in context? And for a lot of people, no, it's just black and white. No, it's not, because I would not kick someone out of my home if they were approaching my home, or even if I caught them breaking in, if they weren't a perceived threat, I'd be like, what's going on?
Sure.
As a believer, my first call is to exercise grace before I exercise judgment, because the Lord doesn't do that for me, And so a lot of our examples don't play out into a real life. And I know if Josh sees someone's breaking in his car, he's not going to put them in a headlock and drop them on the street.
Yeah, he's a good man.
What's going on, bro?
He's a good man.
So his illustration wouldn't even play out in his own character.
For sure.
You know what I mean? That's what I struggle with that.
And illustrations, obviously, they're good to prove a point, but they're not the best to cement a reality that transcends just that illustration, right? It's stuck to that illustration.
Yeah. But we're trying to give we try to give those illustrations to get people to act on them.
For sure. So, but I think
that's what's troublesome.
I think what's interesting about immigration, though, there are clear scriptures, though, that do address foreigners,
for sure,
quote unquote, undocumented. Obviously, that was a different time, right? Where it says, "Do not forget that you were once foreigners in a foreign land, so do not mistreat those among you who are sojourners." And then it literally says, treat them like native-borns, the way that, or unless you forget that you were also once in Egypt. And then you think about Jesus when Herod made that executive order to kill all firstborn. His dad and his mom take him and he becomes a refugee in Egypt, right? So it's there are these scriptures that do point to the ethos and the history of God's people as sojourners, right? Abraham was a sojourner through the land of Canaan. Moses was a sojourner in the land of Midian. All of God's people have a history of being sojourners, right? So for me now, that doesn't mean open borders. No one's saying that, right? There are nations and states that God even establishes as they're going into new territory. But my thing is I think policies should lean towards how can we care for the people who are already here in a way that doesn't oppress and criminalize them with certain criterias and certain policies that make sense for both parties. That's where my mind goes to, right?
Yeah.
So, and the thing that drove me a little crazy about Trump, he does his executive order, and then on True Social, he tweets, or I don't know what you call True, he posts, hey, we should stop deporting our farmers and our hotel workers because they are so, like, they have made our country great. I'm like, this dude's insane. What is he doing? Like, he's now picking and choosing which ones you can deport, but on paper, he's just deporting everybody. And that's what I'm saying, like, politics on the front side when it comes to, like, the public image, it's so infuriating to me nowadays.
Yeah.
Right? And so,
well, yeah, I mean, to your regard, like, there was a season in my life where I got involved in politics. And a lot of this stuff you and I, everything you and I have talked offline. So you and I are just kind of putting it on camera right now. We've spent hours talking about this stuff. But, I got involved on some political levels with some stuff, and I just found it's all really red taped. It's all really messy. There's a lot of corporate funding that, funds people's interests and stuff like it. It's not so, you can use the word moral or whatever it is as we think. And that's on all sides, right? I would feel yucky. I would feel used a lot. It was like if you fit into someone's criterion for fundraising or whatever, it was just like you're propped up. And
yeah, for sure.
It feels very uncomfortable because, like, if you're authentic and you're really trying to, like, create movement and make an impact, it's like, oh, well, we can't do that because that's red taped. We're actually in agreement on it. Like, a lot of Democrats and Republicans, they go to dinner together, they go to lunch together. Whether it's locally, and there are some areas where it's hostile, but overall, I mean, it's hostile lately, but overall, though, I mean, even on Capitol Hill, like, all those individuals are part of the same fraternities. They went to the same universities. Their wealthy families came from and one family's a Republican, one family's Democrat. I mean, they celebrate 4th of July together. And so, but then the moment lights, camera, action, they diss each other because it's a part of the quote unquote their game.
For sure.
And so for me, what I'm trying to do as a pastor, and it's what has been my response to individuals that DM me, like, hey, why aren't you posting more about this? Or why isn't your church doing it? I said, because I don't believe in PR posts. It's not my jam.
For sure.
I don't say, hey, pray for the fires in LA when I'm 45 minutes from LA. What my church should be doing is filling up a truck of water and diapers and blah, blah, which is what we did. And I don't need to blast that on social. What people don't realize is we live in an age that is so full of PR, so full of marketable content that they don't realize they're even expecting their church, their leaders, their this to fall into the PR scheme.
For sure.
Why haven't you said that? Why aren't you doing it? And I'm like, I can come sit with me. I can make you a list of friends that I've been trying to connect who are dealing with members of their church who are being deported. I could tell you with friends that are dealing with documented single mothers, trying to get them milk and diapers. And should I live that on Instagram every day because that's what Paris Hilton needs to do? Or because that's your expectation of Justin Bieber, that if he cares about people, he needs to be. You can have that PR expectation because that's what the world has created. But I'm not part of the world system.
For sure.
Though I use it, I'm not bound by its laws. So if you need me to be your instrument of public relations now you can just ask your church, hey, what are we doing with this? And I was responding to people. I was like, you want me to show you emails? You want me to introduce you to families that are dealing with that? Do you want me to talk to people that we're praying with? Like, what is going to appease you that we're involved? Because I'm not going to use those individuals, do a selfie with them, and be like, your church is in the front lines, because I'm not here for that PR junk. That's been my DM response. I don't do PR.
Yeah, I was literally on the phone call with an organization, a nonprofit, that was like, hey, we know you're leading the initiative to help your friend get released or at least deported. Would you mind jumping on a call with his wife to tell your guys a story? And I was like, hey, I just want you to know, I don't want y'all to use my boy.
Yeah.
This is a very personal issue, and all these news outlets are trying to get in touch with us and his wife. But that's not what I don't want him to just be a prop for your own agenda, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what a lot of what you're saying is that's what people do. And so it's like,
he wants to either lock in Korea, which he was self-deporting, or be home with his family.
Yeah, that's it. But instead,
he does not want to be
locked up.
Yeah.
And
he don't want to be on ABC News, CBS, unless he felt a call that, hey, this is a fight I want to take up.
Yeah.
But apart from that, it's his choice. Whether it's his family's choice whether they want to pick up that fight and fight for what they think is equal opportunity, or they could say, I just want to either have a life in Korea, which is really different for me and I don't want, or I just want to be back home with my family,
and,
you know?
And we, virtue signaling, right? Because we live in a culture that rewards rage. Rage has become a currency, and rage is now like
if you're not mad about it, then you don't care.
Exactly. It's now like a moral superiority. While back in the day, to be moral was to be good.
Yeah.
In today's generation, to be moral is to be an activist, right? So if you hate certain things, you have a superiority than people who don't, quote unquote, hate those things. So you'll see a lot of people virtue signaling. They don't care at all about this issue, but they act like they care because they have to on social media.
Yeah.
So these are the type of people who are just jumping to one thing, to one thing, to one thing. So I even had to remind our community, like, hey, like, everyone has different convictions, like you're talking about. Everyone has different assignments and callings and different ways that they can support. Some people are supporting prophetically online. Some people are supporting like shepherds behind the scenes, caring for these actual people. Yeah. So don't impose onto someone else your way of fighting injustice and or cultural issues, right? Yeah. And so for me, I understand as a pastor, I have to bring some perspective and theology in certain moments. And I don't lean into every issue. I'll lean in. The week before elections this year, it just so happened, I preached on give on to Caesar's what is Caesar's. So I leaned into politics. This one I leaned into it because it just hit home.
Yeah.
It just landed right here. And I saw my community online going crazy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm checking with them personally. And then I'm also leaning in prophetically and pastorally. Yeah. And so it's interesting, man.
And you have to be aware that I think you and I, and we talked about this. I think that because my family being a Hispanic family from one side's from Mexico, one side's from historic California when it was Mexico, and then my grandfather, his father immigrated from Spain, and so I have family that have all immigrated either legally or were here, pretty much along, like with the natives. They were Mexican, but they were here with the natives. Being on my grandma's side, a lot of it, they're all from like Arizona and California and historic Mexico before the Mexican-American War. So, they all have more of a like, hey, like my Mexican family has more of a, let's have strong borders. Let's just, data shows majority of people that are coming, from the country are or specifically from Mexico, are coming in, and there's drug muling happening and crime rate that comes in and individuals like that, and so they take, because they come from East LA and all that, they take much more, and then you get generations down the line, and they swing back more towards, actually, no, let's figure out a way, which is fine. Everybody can vote accordingly how they want to do that. My heart as a pastor, right? My heart leans towards, like, we can agree that our politics are messy. We can agree that we're a two-party system. And when you have two-party systems, you have very harsh pendulum swings, right? You go to like England, they're like a 7, 8, 9 party system, right? Canada, I think they're 4 or 5 party system, something like that. We're two party. So that means every time a new administration comes in, these tend to be very hard pendulum swings. And so when that happens, that's going to create a lot of impact on people. System. It's a shock to the system. For sure. Because that's uncommon to be a two-party system in that way, right? We kind of exercise two kingdoms at one time, right? You have a northern kingdom, and then you have Judah, southern kingdom. And if you read the Old Testament and see the differences between the northern kingdom and kingdom of Judah, they were very different from each other. They had very different leaders, very different kings, all that kind of stuff like that. And when that happens, when those pendulum swings happen, sometimes it's for the good of the overall society of America. Other times it takes a very big negative impact. And so people did vote the current administration to do what they're doing. He's living up to what they wanted him to do. Not how he did it, but what they wanted him to do. It's like, hey, clean up this whole. That was 50% of his actual platform. Both elections have been the border wall and all that stuff like that. So a lot of people are saying, hey, he's doing what we asked him to do. We, half of America talked. We voted. He's doing what we're doing. And then so that can happen. And for me, as a pastor, I somewhat have to be like a medic, right? You go out in war, say, America's fighting Germany. Anyone who has a medic helmet on means he has taken up an oath not to carry a weapon. He will not shoot back. He will not retaliate. He is just there to heal people. And what I would love for people to understand, for me, my personal take, I can't say for all pastors, my personal call, because I got like really strong political views, and you and I have talked about it. I like spend hours a day watching politics just because I'm an aware citizen, but I don't ever take it to my platforms. I don't ever take it so to say, I don't really think we took a thing on this podcast today, but I don't do it because the way I view myself, my call is that I'm like a spiritual medic. Yeah. I'm meant to not carry a weapon. I carry a spiritual weapon, one that wrestles not against flesh and blood, but I don't carry a physical weapon so that I could be on the battlefield and I can help without retaliation those that are in need. And one day it may be a conservative person that's in need. One day it may be a liberal person in need. One day it may be a Republican in need. Democrat. I'm not there to argue that. As me in my individual role as a pastor, my job is to say, is your eternity secured? Do you know Christ? Have you reconciled with God in this life to have a relationship with Him? And so I'm trying, like, I can at the same time. So here's where I was getting to is, to your point with your friend and other individuals, it does break my heart that there are people who have either served time, and because of the big pendulum swish of administration, your buddy and other individuals have been alive in certain administrations that have said, you're fine. Go back to life. Go find a wife. Go get married. Go have kids. We're aware you're undocumented. And then a new one comes in and goes, psych, and it rips. That's, as a pastor, then that's what breaks my heart, because it's like, hey, this is our problem. We created this issue. It's not like these individuals have been hiding in trash cans, hiding underground, because there are countries where there are refugees who literally like hide because the country they came from is terrible, but they also cannot live in the country they're at. And so they're literally like in sewers and in warehouses and all that stuff like that. Our undocumented people are not hiding. They are out. They are aware. Government is aware that they exist. And so it's almost, in a lot of regions, it's like, hey, we're just going to turn around and pretend you're not here, but also, continue to work and continue to, do the things that maybe other individuals don't want to do. And so then, as a pastor, as a medic, that's where my heart goes, like, man, we've been tricking these individuals. And I know you brought someone into office that's supposed to help clean this up, but the way that this is impacting people on the ground, it's losing a little bit of the humanity as a dutiful Christian, that of love. And so I don't do any of the extreme statements of people like, oh, it's Nazi Germany or whatever. For me, I'm just like, hey, I'm a medic, and this guy that's been here for 30 years and we've been aware that he's undocumented, like, I'm uncomfortable how that is playing out. These, I got family members, not in my direct the mess up line, but like through marriage and all that, like from the East Coast, did crimes when they were 12 and like went to juvie for 6 months. And then now they're like 45 with, American family, American kids, and they're, being sentenced in ICE court and other stuff like that. And for me, I go like, oh, this is like,
this is where, like, because generally speaking, like, you and I in that regards are the same, right? We're pastors. We want to preach the word. We lean in cultural moments and moments that are necessary, but that's not like, we're not fixed. There are some pastors who are like fixated with politics. That's not us.
They feel that that's their
that's part of
call.
their calling. And you and me aren't like that. But this was This was the first time I was talking to my wife, like during 2020. You know, I marched the streets with
Yep.
police brutality and all that.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
I didn't stand for BLM as an organization.
Right.
But the cause and the cry and the outcry of the injustice of generations of police brutality, I stood for that, right?
Yeah.
And at that time, I stood in sympathy for all my black friends and
Yeah.
the black community. But I'm not black, so my lived experience is totally different. This time, when I'm seeing my community being snatched at, this is where I get emotional. I was telling my wife, like, man, I understand even more so the outcry in 2020 and the decades before that of all the centuries in American history
Yeah.
of police brutality, slavery, Jim Crow, injustice, the prison system, all that stuff. And so this time I was like it hurt so deep because I'm watching people who look like me, one, people I know, specifically Asian and brown communities. And in my church, it's not just him. There's other Latino families hitting me up and saying X, Y, and Z about their family and their parents, and they're freaking out. And so this is when I'm actually a little more like, well, policy matters, right? Like reform matters, right? And so and you too, for sure, you say that.
I mean, and I don't know where you and I would stand on that. This part we didn't talk, but like, again, it would be informed by your conviction. I don't know that I would connect it to duty. I think there is a duty that we have towards what's
For
actually
sure.
going, but like in the long run, like
Yes.
how it plays out, how you end up voting. Like there, I would say is like your conviction is drawing
For
you into
sure.
a direction that you have a voice and that you want to inform others of that conviction.
And this is why, like, I understand now when, like, you know, politicians or the president would say, we have a nonpartisan bill that passed, right? Where both parties agreed to this.
Yeah.
That's my prayer and hope with immigration, that there will
Right.
be conservative individuals, believers convicted by the word, and progressive liberals, and they get together. And one might fight for national border security, and maybe the progressive is not as convicted in that. But they're like, okay, let's meet halfway. And then this person's like, look, there are youth and minors who've been here since they were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Can we have some qualifications for who we prioritize for pathways to citizenship? Yeah, if we're talking about criminals or people who've committed heinous crimes, even my boy, we understood that. I understood that.
Yeah, he's aware. He
we
was like,
we were
whatever,
like,
whatever bed they tell me to lie in, I'll lie in.
Even
it.
me, I
Yeah.
had so much respect for that because he was like, look, I'm ready to go home.
I'm not here to ask them to make an exception for me. He said, I'm
ready to go home.
Yeah,
but
if
why
that-
is he locked up right now in El Paso when he was he was en route? But that's not just happening to him. That's happening
Right,
to
yeah, that's not an
hundreds.
individual,
And there's
yeah.
a quota, right? 3,000 people need to be deported per day right now.
Yeah.
Because there's a quota. And when there's a quota, humanity is gone. Now everyone is just a statistic and a number and a data point for their own their job performance, pretty much, right?
Yeah.
We need to arrest X amount of people and detain them,
Yeah.
right? And so it's like,
And there's a list. Once there's a list and there's a known
and like
area, you
there's
just go through
policy
it.
issues
Yeah.
and there's, to me, there's like humanity issues, right? To me, I don't know how far to take this. And by the way, this is verbally processing. For those of you guys who are listening, Beyond the Letter has made me tough. At me, at you, I don't really care no more. But my point is, so I'm verbally processing this with you, right?
Right.
Like there's policy, there's humanity issues. Like I don't know how. So when I was talking to some people that are helping people who are detained, it's like they're treating them like prisoners of war.
Yeah.
Right? My boy hasn't brushed his teeth in 5 days. He took a shower once in 4 days. For the first 2 days, he had one meal. He also told me the plane where all the undocumented were detained, the plane was broken for 24 hours. I've never heard of that. Mm-hmm. While they were all chained up from the ankle, waist, arm. So he said they were stuck on the plane for 24 hours on the way to El Paso. This is, and then for blankets, they have foil, right? And he said right now they're shoving 10 to 15 people per room. So like you can't even lay down all together. You have to lay on top of each other.
Yeah.
This is a guy.
Yeah, it's hard. Who was on his way to Korea.
Yeah, he was self-deported. So it's like,
Yeah.
for me, it's like there's humanitarian issues that I think is being violated for the sake of policy issues, right? And people are like, oh, you should obey the law. I'm like, well, slavery was legal at one point. We fought against that, right? Segregation was legal at one point. We fought against that, right? Women not having the rights to vote was legal at one point. We fought against that.
Yeah.
In the same way, yes,
I take the opinion that everything, when you're at a country where everything can be voted on, everything is up for discussion.
For sure. So
that has never made sense to me. When people just go, hey, it's the law. It's like, well, you can change that.
Yeah. So it's
we can change anything that's not in the Constitution. We can change. Anyone could vote for anything.
But here's my point. Who's the one who says that?
I get what you're saying.
Those laws don't affect them.
Right.
Because those unjust laws did not affect their lives. It affected the minorities and especially black people, right? And women, they're the ones who are fighting for this. And so
you had movements. You had that. For me, that's why the problem is, stuff easily, because of social media, everything gets flooded with, like you said, it's the negative, it's the stuff. So what gets flooded is someone like, blowing up a car or throwing rocks at agencies or people flooding in streets without permits. So it's like, they're like, you can protest, but you have to get a permit so that it's safe, And so I think there's responsibilities that we all need to take hold of.
For sure.
That says, I'm not going to go start a protest or lead one, but as people would come to my church and say, hey, Pastor Adam, as a Christian, for whatever protest, you want to go to a protest that's against abortions that would be close to our Christian values. You want to, go to a protest against certain educational curriculums. You want to go to a protest amplifying that you want the law to change when it comes to immigration. It's great. Go to the city, apply for a permit, make sure that the people that you are leading are safe, because not everyone is in your corner.
For sure.
And when you are protesting, whether it's women's empowerment movement that led towards women voting, whether it be towards, everything that Martin Luther King Jr. was doing, and some of the stuff, it may not be permanent based. I mean, someone may say, hey, some of the stuff MLK did because he's black, it wasn't allowed to be permitted. I get that, but I think that times have progressed enough that you're going to get a permit for a protest, and you got to go by your conscience at the end of the day. So if you feel according to your conviction that you're going to go break law to do the protest, okay, whatever. But I think the way I try to process it, if I have two sons, as they get older, if they wanted to be part of something, what would dad inform them to do? I would say, hey son, if this is important to you, you should go do that. But make sure if you're going to something, if it's not permitted, I would prefer you not to go.
For sure.
Because that's where things aren't safe. That's when the police aren't aware what's being protested.
Yeah.
That's when the police are probably going to be harder on the protest because it didn't go through the city, your rights within the county and the city. So son, be mindful. Or I'll go with you to the protest.
Yeah.
But let's do it in a way that doesn't cause people to get hurt, and that is from a dad and a pastor, because members do talk to me. As a Christian, can I go protest this thing? Yes, absolutely. For that thing, yeah, of course. That's a conviction. Some things that are political would be our duty, but others would be your conviction. So if your conviction is immigration, you should go to that protest. But here's what I want to encourage you to be mindful of. Just because it's a protest, you are still called to obey rulers and authorities.
For sure. Absolutely.
So make sure it's done. That's just me on the outside, what I am saying and what I would be saying to people in my church and members. Go amplify your conviction.
For
do
sure.
it, that you are in America. You have the right to do that.
Yeah.
Go do it. And if something is absolutely unhumane that you think, go shout it from the rooftops. It's beautiful. You have that right. Martin Luther King Jr. said that the church is to be the conscience of the state. So use the Christian values to be a conscience of what your conviction is. But don't be stupid, because I don't want you to get hurt.
Yeah.
And
that's why I think conversations are important.
Yeah.
To be holistic, right? Because I'm talking about, as we're talking about Romans 13, it does say submit to governing authorities. And it does say that the government has been sanctioned by God to yield the sword, right?
Yeah.
Judgment, justice. And so we understand that, right? And at the same time, MLK, he was letters from the Birmingham jail, right? He talks about just laws and unjust laws, right? A just law is when a law of the land squares with the law of God. That's a just law. When the law of the land is against the word of God, that's an unjust law. And in that moment, we're no longer submitted to that, right?
Yep.
You see that in the book of Acts. You tell us, is it better to obey man or obey God? We're going to keep on preaching, right? In those moments, you're able to disobey laws when the laws are unjust. So yeah, like protesting, rioting, that's the thing, right? So you want to have both conversations, right? You want to have the person who's fighting for something for reform, right? There's reform and riot. Right?
Yeah.
Reform is to make the system better.
Yeah.
Rioting is burning everything to the ground.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Let's start over. I'm angry. I just want to let it be known.
And that's not what
mad.
I'm saying. And that's not what I'm endorsing. I don't think any pastor is, right? But some pastors who may be more emotionally tied to an issue might say, I could understand why they're doing that, right? What did MLK say? There was that phrase when they're asking about people burning stuff down, and he said, there's that famous thing he said. I mean, everything's on top of their head.
Yeah, I don't know that one.
But anyways, my point is...
But yeah, anytime there's social reform, you're going to have, and this could be like a really bad, and we'll land the plane, but it's probably like not a great connection, but it's like through school and through, what we just commonly, I think everyone agrees on is like you had like Martin Luther King Jr.'s movement, and then you had like Malcolm X movement, and you had Black Panther movement, which is a little more volatile. Black Panther movement, a little more violent. And which one has stuck out towards the end of the days? It was the Martin Luther King. It was the one that Martin Luther King Jr. led, which was, for all intents and purposes, on the outside, what it's come to be, which was, an ethic that, that fought through the court system, and he gave his life for it. He didn't even get to see everything that it would become, but the legacy still lives on. And then you kind of have more of the violent movements that it just faded away into the cities that were beaten down and affected and individuals and stuff. And so, violence never turns a society around. It doesn't,
His quote was, a riot is the language of the unheard.
Yeah.
He wasn't endorsing the riots, but he was just showing empathy.
Yeah, he's saying, look at this.
Look, this is how much pain they have.
Yeah.
Nowadays it's a little different, right? Because this is like some weak, fragile people just burning stuff.
Well, it happened in 2020.
It gave permission to just burn things.
Anything that doesn't, and again, I'm not a poli-sci person, but when things aren't organized, chaos is always invited.
For sure.
And so a lot of the stuff that's happening is unorganized. Like you see this weekend, King's protest happened. There wasn't, because it was a pretty organized. There was, there were I don't even know who was behind it. I'm sure it was something Democrat or whatever, but still, it was more organized than it was last week when it was happening. Everybody's like, let's just go to the streets and make our voice heard. That's where people are coming out. So, organized things tend to create less chaos.
For sure.
And that's what you saw even with these last protests. Right?
I'm curious to see how this is going to unfold. What's happening with these raids? Because this is just the beginning,
Yeah.
And it could be one of those things that just kind of subsides. Who knows? But for me, man, I've been talking to DOJ. And here, let me tell you something as well. Some of the people who have been supporting my boy are conservatives, as I told you, right? Some of those pastors on the front, they're against open borders, which I think makes sense, but like literally open borders. And then they identify strongly with the Trump agenda, but behind the scenes, they're DMing me and like, bro, that was wrong.
Well, they still understand their duty. They still understand their calling to be a medic. Yeah, but he's like, in the long run, publicly, they say, this is what I want. But I mean, one-to-one, human to human. For sure. Like, however I can help, let me know. For sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Sammy's going to get deported real soon.
He's Puerto Rican, so
he's fine. He doesn't have to. I forget.
He doesn't have to worry
Puerto Rican's fine.
He's safe. Will, we're closing it down right now, Sammy. Will brought it up. The immigration things. Yeah.
Adam was like, for the last episode.
I was like, bro. I know you want to do it. I was like, dude, I know you want to do it. So I was like, let's just have the conversation. We're a month past the height. I mean, I know people are still connected to people personally, but it's at least enough that hopefully.
Did you talk about what you did on Sunday and probably Saturday? Did you tell
I did. No, yeah. We talked about it right at the beginning. How we Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
a master class on dealing with it.
Thank you, bro.
Yeah.
When I told my church, when you're a one ethnic church, it's actually easy to
for
pastor
sure,
that
for
church
sure.
because whatever that ethnicity leans towards,
You just
even if people are different, think differently in there, it's only going to be like 10%.
Yeah, yeah.
And 90% everybody's going to think the same. Black church, this church, Hispanic church, 90% of everybody's going to lean towards the same. You got a white church, it's going to be a lot of the same
For sure.
politic. But I go, the moment God favors you with a multi-ethnic church, it's you got new problems.
For sure.
Which is you're always if you choose an opinion-based, a conviction-based thing, but isn't Christian duty, half of the room is always going to be mad at you.
For sure.
You know. I got a lot of DMs that were like, "Hey, I never recognized how unique our church was and how hard that's probably got to be to pastors." Like, because I got Hispanics that are dealing with it, but then I got Black people that were like, "Man, I'm voting for secure border." Like, that's the reason why. So and then I got Hispanics that are like, I spent thousands of dollars to get here, right? I'm not going to let my cousin just come. So it's not just a white, Black,
sure.
Hispanic. It's
For
like
sure.
internally, it's ethnically divided
For sure.
as well, right? So,
sure.
and then you got we talked a little bit first generation. You got first generation who's like, I did it right, but by the time you get to third generation, they're like, yeah, but my friend is an immigrant, and so then it's like that passion has waned, right? So, it's the same thing in the Hispanic community. Like, generation one comes, they have kids, their kids want to be American so bad.
For sure.
But then by generation 4, they're like, I'm Hispanic. They love being Mexican.
My
because
dad
they
and I
got
always talk
like,
about this. My dad's like, he's the thankful immigrant, right? I'm the American. So it's a different experience.
Yeah, right.
During 2020, my dad was like, "Hey son, like, can you be quiet a little bit? Like, let's thank America." Right?
Yeah.
And I was like, "Dad, your experience is so different from my experience. You
Right.
came here as an immigrant. I was born a U.S. citizen in the U.S. Embassy, and so we had to have that talk
For sure.
You know what I mean? So first gen,
It's just
second
being
gen, it's
aware.
all different. Yeah, it's totally different.
Yeah.
Totally different.
Yeah. Y'all, thanks for joining us. If you need a medic, call us. Bye.
Peace.